reliving the horrors of Auschwitz. The agony etched over his face. And yet, despite the pain, these Holocaust survivors have returned to this former death camp to remind the world where anti-Semitism and racism can lead. In front of the gates of Auschwitz, known as the Gates of Death, a commemoration ceremony in which delegates from 61 countries are taking part, and 200 Auschwitz survivors, each with their terrible memories of what happened here.
I remember naked women being driven in trucks from the barracks to a gas chamber. I can hear them screaming. I can hear it in my subconscious when I remember those events.
Elza Baker, who's blind, was 8 when she arrived at Auschwitz. She was one of the 23,000 Sinti and Roma people deported here.
It is an honoured for me to be here among so many people who have suffered so greatly, perhaps even much more so than I. And I it is. I don't know. I'm upset.
But in spite of the past, anti-Semitism is on the rise again.
In 2020, we hear the same lies the Nazis used so effectively in their propaganda. They said, Jews have too much power. Jews control the economy and the media. Jews control governments. Jews control everything. We hear this madness online, in the media, and even within democratic governments.
These brave men and women know the cost of anti-Semitism. They can't forget. But it already seems that too many aren't listening.
And for more on this story, we can speak to Pinchas Goldschmidt. He is the chief rabbi of Moscow and president of the European Conference of Rabbis. Mr. Goldschmidt, thank you so much for joining us here on DW. We were seeing those images of survivors speaking yesterday, saying it is so important to remember. And it seems that message is more urgent than ever. At least that's what we took away from those ceremonies yesterday. Why is that?
In order that the suffering should not be in vain, to give meaning to those, and a lot of people who did not survive Auschwitz, the last words which they scribbled on the wall was, never forget. And I think that this is the message to our generation and to the future, is in order for this not to happen again, we're not allowed to forget.
Are people listening to that message?
I think that the fact that 50 heads of states were in Jerusalem last week to commemorate the 75 years of the liberation of Auschwitz, the fact there was this great effort in Auschwitz yesterday speaks for itself, speaks volumes.
There will be a time in the future, which our report also looked at, where those survivors will no longer be around to take part in these ceremonies. How do you carry that message forward?
The message is carried forward through, I think that today in Europe, which is almost 500 million citizens, every person, every child, every school child should be one day in his life should go visit Auschwitz, should see what can happen in the center of world culture, in the center of world civilization, what can happen if things go wrong, if there's hate, there's intolerance. It can end up in Auschwitz.
What about the fact that we're seeing at the same time, as we're remembering Auschwitz, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, not only across Europe, but right here in Germany? Why is that?
There's a lot of political turbulence. the European project is under question. And when things are fine, when there are no economic difficulties, so people don't search to blame the other. Today, because of such problems, because of the fears experienced by a large part of the European population, so we're looking always to blame the other one, the immigrant, the Jew. So, and this is the reason why anti-Semitism reoccurs. But I have to say that a large part of this resurgence of anti-Semitism is because of the social media. The social media is totally unedited contents of people who are totally unbalanced can and influence millions of people. So radicals can influence millions of people, and they are being given this platform. They don't even have to pay for it. And this is the great danger. And I think the part of the political turbulence today is the free ride all those people have on the social media.
Mr. Goldschmidt, you also rebuilt the Jewish community in Russia after going there in the very early 90s. Looking at the Jewish community you have in Moscow and also across Russia, but also non-Jews, how do you teach them to remember what has happened and to carry that into the future? What is the message that you give them?
The message we give to our co-citizens in all those countries where today there is, again, a Jewish community, and I think the revival of the Jewish communities in Eastern Europe after the fall of the wall has been one of the great miracles of our times. And I thank God that I was able to do my little part in the renaissance of the Jewish community in Eastern Europe. And I think that when we tell the governments the fact that you have today a functioning Jewish community in your country, this is adding to the beauty of your country and your place. So I think this is a message which is being received with a lot of understanding.
We'll have to leave it there. Pinchas Goldschmidt, the Chief Rabbi of Moscow, President of the European Conference of Rabbis. Thank you for joining us here on DW.
Thank you for having me.